Li Yun was shocked as he realized how powerful Princess Yang and Ling Zhu were. He looked at them and wondered how one of them lost their power but retained their memories, while the other retained their powers but still turned out to be a dummy. Taishan mocked them and said that it was embarrassing to see them in this state. Princess Yang told him that he wasn't qualified enough to talk to her since he was just a low-ranking soldier in the Heavenly Palace. She demanded that he reveal the person behind him. Taishan claimed that the newer generation had replaced the older one, so her words meant nothing to him now. Moreover, it was she who was not qualified to talk to the person behind him, since it was someone who she couldn't even comprehend. Princess Yang got mad and challenged him to a fight, so that they could compare whose master was stronger. She had 3 people backing her up. However, Taishan didn't seem worried about it, since he thought that he could easily take on 3 Taiyi Golden Immortals. In the next second, he got thrown into the sky by a powerful punch from Ling Zhu. Bro only maxed his stats and talking crap. Both the other elders were flabbergasted upon seeing Taishan crashing like a plane. Ling Zhu had reached the later stage of Taiyi Golden Immortal, so she told them that it was too arrogant for a normal Taiyi Golden Immortal to challenge her. She looked at Princess Yang and asked her if they were done. Princess Yang quickly told her to watch behind her back, but it was too late. Taishan had gotten up and he was ready to fight back. He grabbed her by the head and violently smashed her into the ground. Princess Yang called out to her in a worry, but it seemed like Ling Zhu had become unconscious from the impact. Taishan laughed and warned her to try to revive the ancient times, as she would meet the same fate as all the saints who objected in the ancient times. Suddenly, 4 more Taiyi Golden Immortals joined the battle. They all stood behind Taishan, as he asked the princess if the person behind her could handle their saint. He looked back and told the immortals that they were late. Out of nowhere, one of them slapped him in the face. Everyone was stunned upon seeing this. The man explained that he slapped him for screwing up. He then started reading a message from their master to Taishan. He told him that if he completed the task, he wouldn't punish him, and instead give him an additional 1,000 years of lifespan. Taishan got excited upon seeing this, and told him that he couldn't back down after hearing such encouraging words from his master. Princess Yang knew that something bad was about to happen. Taishan stood up and raised both of his hands, claiming that he was the elder who had reached the later stage of Taiyi Golden Immortal. One after the other, all Taiyi Golden Immortals rose into the air and surrounded the cultivators. With all their powers combined, they launched a terrifying attack that could easily wipe anyone off. Taishan started laughing, as he claimed that he felt bad for the 7th princess. The other immortals started discussing if they should visit the mortal world next and deal with the expert. As the dust faded, Taishan noticed a blue barrier covering the princess and the other cultivators. Da Yi and Huo created the barrier, as they had also joined the battle. Taishan also noticed someone moving around him at light speed. Of course, it was none other than the Immortal Run. Taishan looked up in anger and asked how he even dared to come here since he was in his mother's womb when he was traveling the immortal world. Immortal Run immediately appeared in front of him and told him that he was right, since he became his dad when he was just goofing around. He slashed him with his sword and asked him if he couldn't recognize his own father. Taishan couldn't hold back his anger anymore, since he was being trash-talked by a golden immortal. He thrashed him back with a single hit and sent Immortal Run flying into the air. I had a feeling something like this would happen. Immortal Run started crying like a child and begged the Dragon King for help. The Dragon King came in clutch and caught him before he could fall. The battleground was now set, and both groups were staring at each other from a distance. Taishan noticed that Ling Zhu was coming back to her senses, so he quickly jumped back. She smiled as she got back up, telling them that they also had their allies. A battle between the most powerful immortals was about to start, and Taishan couldn't feel more excited. After this, Rita's stats reveal of all characters from both sides. On one side, there were the cultivators fighting for Li. They had 5 Taiyi Golden Immortals, although only Ling Zhu was in the later stages of that level. She had the highest combat power, being on level 26. Da Yi's sister was still not immortal, so her combat level was at 0.1. Immortal Run was at the Golden Immortal stage, but his combat power was still unknown. On the other hand, the enemy side also had 5 Taiyi Golden Immortals. However, 3 of them were in their mid-stages, while 2 were at the later stages. The strongest among them was Hong Run, with a combat level of 28. He was even stronger than Ling Zhu. Going off their stats, the battle looked highly in favor of the second team. Immortal Run was upset that his combat power was still unknown. Princess Yang analyzed their combat power and realized that they were at a disadvantage since they only had one Taiyi Golden Immortal, who was in the later stages. Ling Zhu looked at her with tears in her eyes and asked her if she was ready to give up her life. Princess Yang thought for a moment and told her that she may have to do that in the worst case, since the enemy was strong. Hearing this, Ling Zhu started eating all the fruits and steamed buns that she had received from Li. She didn't want the food to go wasted in case she didn't make it out of the battle alive. Tai Shang looked at the diversity of the cultivators and said that they were all victims of the last catastrophe. Hong Run told the cultivators that he had received a message from their master, inviting them to join their side in order to preserve the last remaining members of their bloodline. Da Yi stared directly at him and told him that there was no point in talking. Before she could even finish her dialogue, Sword Immortal Run rushed at the enemy team with his sword drawn. He screamed that it was going to be the last day for all of them. He proceeded to bounce back from his own attack and crash land in front of his own team. My man is doing negative damage. The cultivators didn't worry much about their loss, since they knew it didn't really affect their overall combat power. However, they saw the Dragon King burst into flames as he wanted to take revenge for his friend. He transformed into a huge dragon and screamed at Tai Shang. Tai Shang made a hand sign and conjured up a bunch of swords. He told him that size didn't matter for most things, and launched the swords directly at him. A huge explosion rocked across the sky. However, the Dragon King was quick to retreat back into his normal form. Just as he thought he had evaded the attack, Tai Shang appeared behind him and launched the remaining swords at him. He told him that being big wasn't perfect, but being small was too bad. Just as the swords were about to hit him, he was saved by Da Yi. Ling Zhu was still eating, so Princess Yang told him that they needed to start fighting. She quickly tossed the remaining food into her mouth and got ready with her daggers. Without waiting for anyone else, she went straight for the enemy and thought to herself, if this was what death felt like. Huo backed her up and told her that she was going too. The fight got officially started and the two sides clashed in a huge explosion of ice and fire. The bald guy tried to go after Huo, but he was pushed back by the Dragon King. Seeing him immobile, Huo decided to go for the punch, but one of his teammates jumped in. He found the perfect opportunity to hit Huo and the Dragon King with his explosive power. However, they were not harmed since someone had put up a shield to protect them. The two Taiyi Golden Immortals were annoyed to see their attack doing nothing. Suddenly, they felt something cold surrounding their bodies. All of a sudden, they were completely surrounded by water, which froze to create solid ice, trapping the two men inside. It was Princess Yang's signature skill. However, she couldn't hold them off for long as they quickly broke out of the ice. It seemed like the fight was even till now. Tai Shang looked at Da Yi and told them that she had Suanian Water Ring, and combined with her ice element, it was giving her immeasurable power. If they wanted to win, they needed to get rid of her first. One of the immortals stepped forward and announced that he would take care of her. He got down on his knees and put both of his hands on the ground. Suddenly, the ground split open under the other cultivators, and they were surrounded by huge tree roots. Everyone except Da Yi was trapped in the roots. Tai Shang got mad at the immortal and told him that they decided to go for Da Yi first. The man explained that they had to control others first before they went for the main target. All the other immortals looked at him carelessly. However, Da Yi was unguarded, so they decided to go straight for her. Tai Shang rushed towards her with the bald guy and one other immortal. Huo tried to warn Da Yi and told her to run. Da Yi tried using her water ring to stop the men, but they swiftly dodged it and cast a binding rope spell. Da Yi was now trapped in a fiery rope, and she couldn't do anything to get herself out. The other cultivators worriedly looked at her as they tried to free themselves from the roots. Ling Zhu started crying as she wondered what would happen to them if Da Yi was hurt. Tai Shang smiled and told them that the immortal binding rope sealed a person's mana and made them unable to use spells. Even a Da Lu O Golden Immortal couldn't break free from this trap. The binding got stronger if the person had a stronger mana. Tai Shang mocked Da Yi and told her that her master didn't think it through and made the wrong move by sending them here. He announced that he was going to finish her off. The cultivators couldn't bear to watch this sight, but there was nothing they could do. Huo got angry and used all of her power to destroy the roots. She transformed into a phoenix and went straight for Da Yi. However, it was too late. Before she could reach her, she saw Tai Shang piercing her chest with his sword. Both Tai Shang and Da Yi stood still staring at each other, as it was revealed that the sword never hit Da Yi. He missed it by a small margin. After a few moments, Taishang started bleeding from his mouth and collapsed to the ground. All the immortals were shocked upon seeing this, since they couldn't understand what was happening. The first time that I could relate to these guys. Suddenly, a small pocket version of Li jumped out from Da Yi's clothes and freed her from the immortal rope bind. He stood in front of her and told her that he was going to protect her. The immortals couldn't believe that someone could destroy the top-grade innate spiritual treasures so easily. Huo rushed towards Da Yi to make sure that she was okay. The phoenix painting that Li had given her also came to life, and it turned into a baby phoenix. Pocket Li got on top of the baby phoenix and ordered it to go after the bad guys in front of them. The little phoenix called out to Huo and Da Yi to join them in beating the immortals. Both of them immediately locked in and stood behind them. Seeing this, the immortals got terrified and started running for their lives. Huo used her fire abilities to trap them inside a circle. Meanwhile, Da Yi used her ice shards to help Pocket Li get closer to the immortals. The bald guy told them that their only option was to fight. Pocket Li jumped up from the phoenix and punched him in the nose. A few seconds passed and nothing happened. All the immortals started laughing and mocked Pocket Li for being so weak. Suddenly, a powerful explosion occurred that almost felt like an atomic bomb. Everything was completely destroyed by the explosion. Da Yi saw this and realized that it was the end of the fight. She knew that everyone who dared to go against her master faced the same ending. Pocket Li ran towards Da Yi and asked her if she was okay. Da Yi smiled and told him that she was fine. Princess Yang got up and thanked Da Yi for her help. She told her that they were ready to give up their lives and asked if the expert carved the statue. Da Yi excitedly told her that the expert must have known about this, and so he made this plan in advance. Pocket Li told her that he wanted to sleep and went back inside her clothes. Everyone pretended like they didn't see it happen. Huo looked at Princess Yang and asked her if she was actually from the Heavenly Palace. Princess Yang didn't say anything and stared at her in silence. The scene changed to the mortal world, where Li was walking across a forest with the two kids and his dog. Nun Nun asked him where they were going, and he told her that they were looking for the underworld. He knew he couldn't cultivate immortality, so he thought about getting a job in the underworld and becoming immortal that way. The girls thought that it was just a new way for him to have some fun. Suddenly, Li heard some wolves howling nearby. Nun Nun told him that there were packs of wolves watching them, and they had already captured a few of the villagers. She decided that it was time for her to kill them all. Li stopped her at first, but eventually allowed her to go, since it was also time for dinner. Both Nun Nun and the dragon girl flew off to catch the wolves. As soon as they went off, a giant bear appeared out of nowhere. The bear went for the kill, but as soon as Li turned around, it transformed into a cute pet. Both Nun Nun and the dragon girl immediately came back as they sensed danger, but they saw the bear acting as his mount. Li told them that the bear desperately wanted to become his mount, so he took it. Meanwhile, the bear was sweating as he sensed the powerful aura that Li had. He also noticed the 1,000-year-old wolf in Nun Nun's hand, and how they simply regarded it as food. Moreover, the bear could also see Blackie staring at him with murderous intent, so he was happy that he chose to be Li's mount. While eating the wolf, Nun Nun told Li about a nearby village and how it was inhabited by ghosts. She told him that they might find a ghost servant in the village. The dragon girl told them that if they didn't find anyone in the village, they could look in Jade City, which was a bit further to the southwest. Nun Nun explained that the entire city was turned into ghosts because of a war, so they had high chances of finding a ghost servant. Li smiled, but he was getting scared listening to all of this. However, he knew if he wanted to visit the underworld, he had to go into one of these cities and find a ghost servant. That was his only chance to become immortal and live with Da Yi. Li asked the girls how they knew about the ghosts, and they revealed that the wolf had told them. As Li thought about their statement, the wolf thanked him for setting him free and promised to do good in his next life. It was nighttime in a nearby village. As the wind swiftly blew through the streets, a man was seen running for his life. A brown bear was chasing the man. As he ran further, he stumbled and fell down. The bear slowly picked him up, but when the man looked back, he heard Li telling him not to worry. Hearing this, other people also got out of their houses. Li and the others jumped down from the bear and stood in front of them. Li explained that he was with his siblings and wanted to spend a night in their town. One of the men looked at their village chief to seek his approval. I can tell these people play League of Legends just by looking at their faces. The village chief asked Li if he was immortal since he rode into the town on a giant bear. Li coughed and asked him if they could spend the night if they were immortal. The man quickly lit up and told them that they were free to spend the night. However, they didn't have an inn in their village. As he followed the village chief, the people looked at him strangely. Lee asked him if the village was facing some problems and said that his younger sisters might be able to help them. This made the old man stop straight in his tracks. He slowly turned back and told Lee that they were completely fine. The old man opened the door to a building and told them that it was their room. The dragon girl wasn't that happy with their room, but Lee quickly covered her mouth and thanked the village chief. The village chief called his wife and told her to make some food for the guests. She sat with her back towards them, so they couldn't see her face. Lee tried explaining to her why they were visiting, but the village chief stopped him and advised him not to mind her, since she was a bit gloomy. Later, as the three of them were sitting on an old bed, Nun Nun asked Lee if he also thought the village was a bit weird. Lee told her that she was right, since he also noticed that people didn't really like immortal cultivators in this village. All the men looked weak for some reason, and the village chief was also hiding something. Nun Nun quickly got up and told him that she was going to tie them up and asked them what was going on. Suddenly, they heard the voice of a woman from the other room. It was the wife of the village chief, and she was trying to stop him from going somewhere. They also heard the sound of the slap. Nun Nun couldn't bear this any longer, so she decided to go and punish him. However, Lee stopped her and told her that it was better for them to not get involved in family matters. The two of them continued listening, and the sounds eventually stopped after a few minutes. Lee suggested that they should get some sleep and inquire about the issue tomorrow. As soon as he killed the cannibal's flame, an old woman appeared in front of him. The old woman turned out to be the chief's wife. She started crying and told Lee that he had to set things straight for them. She explained that their village used to be peaceful and happy until the 5 female ghosts showed up. All the men in their village got seduced by these ladies, and it ruined everything. The old woman told them that the men were going to meet the ghosts right now. Outside, the group of men were walking in the dark with their lamps. Some of them noticed that the village chief was also going with them. It surprised them, since he was old and didn't look to be into all that stuff. The village chief told them that he was old, but he had his son with him to do the deed. I don't want to know how this works. All the village men continued, making their way up some stairs to a small house. This was where all the stuff took place. The old woman led Lee and the 2 little girls to this house and told them that she couldn't go any further. Lee held the dragon girl and Nun Nun and told them that there was nothing to be scared of, since he was with them. Before he could say anything, Nun Nun rushed to the window and started peeking inside. She called out Lee to take a look. As the 3 of them looked inside, they saw the villagers doing some nasty stuff with the ghosts. Lee tried to protect the kids from watching all that stuff and covered their eyes. As he continued watching, he got nervous and decided that it was best for them to just observe. However, Nun Nun didn't want to just sit still while all that stuff happened, so she jumped out the window and announced that she was going to punish everyone on behalf of heaven. The men inside got scared as they saw a cultivator. They tried acting tough and told the ghosts to stay behind. As they fought her off, Nun Nun punched the first few guys who ran at her and threw them to the ground. She then looked at the 5 ghost ladies and told them that it was their turn now. All the men immediately ran away to save their lives. Lee saw them running and wondered how Nun Nun was so strong. As he walked inside, all the ghost ladies knelt down and asked him for forgiveness. Nun Nun didn't feel too good about them, so she told them that they were going to be punished since they were harming the mortals. Lee, on the other hand, could see things from a different perspective, so he told her to wait. Both Nun Nun and the dragon girl immediately thought that Lee wanted some favors from the ghost ladies, so they invited him to do the job. The ghost ladies told him that they never killed any person, and all of them came to them willingly. Lee told them that they were wrong, since they were sucking the life out of people, which reduced their lifespan and killed them at an early age. The girls knew that they were guilty, so they presented themselves to be punished. Lee got a nosebleed as he saw them on the ground. The girls explained that they were just some lonely ghosts who were trying to survive. Their souls would vanish if they didn't suck yang energy. The dragon girl suggested that they go to the underworld. However, the girls told her that they couldn't go back. It was impossible for them to reincarnate in the underworld, so they would just be suffering in the river of darkness and get bullied by the Ghost King. They were all siblings who had been sold off when they were young. They decided to free themselves from the suffering and became ghosts. However, they didn't know that death would be 1,000 times more painful. Lee saw them crying as they told their heartbreaking story. Lee told them that they were operating a brothel, but instead of charging money, they were charging yang energy. Even though they suffered a lot, they never thought about harming people, which meant that they could still be saved. He told them that it was easier to get something precious, but harder to seek perfect love. This quote hit the girls hard, and it got them thinking. Lee told them that the men who were claiming to die for them all ran away at the first sight of danger. The girls told him that they were used to this behavior. However, upon meeting him, all of their resentment and obsession was gone. They all started praising him and told him that they would serve him well if he became their guest. Lee respectfully rejected their offer and told them that he had someone in his heart that he admired a lot. The girls thought that they weren't qualified to be with him and were envious of the women who Lee admired. Lee told them that he needed their help and asked if there were any ghost servants nearby. The girls told him that they wanted to avoid ghost servants, and this is why they were hiding here. So if he wanted to find one, he needed to go to Green Jade City. The ghosts were creating an organization in the city to fight the servants. However, that city could turn into a ghost town, and it was very dangerous for him to go. Lee placed his hand on the girl's shoulder and told her that he used to be scared of ghosts. However, upon meeting all of them, he realized that ghosts could also be good and bad. He smiled and told them that he wasn't scared of ghosts anymore. As he left the house, the giant bear was already standing outside. Lee rode the bear with Blackie and the two girls and prayed for the reincarnation of the ghost girls. As they rode away, Nun Nun asked him if it was okay for them to leave the ghosts by themselves, since they would continue to suck the yang energy out of people. Lee screamed and told her that he had completely forgotten about that part. He said that they couldn't do much about it, but he hoped that the ghosts would start sucking a bit less energy from now on. In the ghost house, the girls were experiencing reincarnation. As they slowly went into their new lives, they hoped to be on Lee's side. In the Green Jade City, two ghost servants watched as the people continued turning into ghosts. The ghosts had slaughtered every living thing within 100 miles and turned them into weapons. The black servants said that the ghosts needed to burn on the 18th floor of hell for their actions. However, returning them to the underworld was as difficult as trying to become an immortal. They had already lost a lot of their men fighting the ghosts. Suddenly, a ghost servant informed them that a big shot was coming to their town. He had heard the news from the ghost ladies. The ghost servant asked him about the big shot, and the man told him that he was with two little girls and a black dog. The ghost servants immediately knew that it was the expert who gave them the Book of Life and Death. They got excited hearing this news and thought that the expert was going to help them. As they were celebrating the arrival of the expert, a ghost saw them and reported this incident to the king. He told him that the ghost servants had gone insane after suffering such great losses. To be honest, I would think the same if I saw them laughing in the middle of the night. The ghost queen heard this and suggested that they use this opportunity to eradicate all the ghost servants. The ghost king agreed with her choice and ordered the soldiers to turn the underworld into their public toilet. As the ghost servants were talking to each other, they saw a strange portal opening behind them. They knew that it was the ghost king, so they gathered all the ghost servants and prepared their defense. They had to hold off the ghosts until the expert arrived. Suddenly, the blue portal started moving and cut one of the ghost servants in half. This made the other ghost servant mad, since he knew it was the ghost king's doing. The ghost king walked out of the portal with the queen and stood in front of the servants. The leader of the ghost servants ordered them all to charge. Meanwhile, Lee was riding towards the city on the bear. As they got closer to the city, he saw the signs of a huge battle going on in the city. Lee immediately stopped the bear and stared ahead with a worried expression. Nun Nun asked him if they were not going to the city. Lee told her that he had a bad feeling, so he got off the bear and set up a tent in a safe place away from the city. He lit up a fire and suggested that they rest here for a while and talk about it later. In the Jade City, the ghost servants were completely overwhelmed by the ghosts. They had a huge disadvantage in terms of their numbers. The white ghost servant used his powers to kill off all the mob ghosts who were surrounding them. He said that it was becoming difficult for them to deal with these smaller ghosts, and they had to take care of the Ghost King too, who had the strength of a golden immortal. They knew that if the battle continued, they would be wiped out. The black servant assured the other that they might still win, if they managed to hold off until the expert arrived. They still had a potion given to them by Grandma. The Ghost King noticed the white servant holding the potion, and he immediately went for it. The servant threw the bottle away and blasted it with his power. Before the Ghost King could even reach it, the Ghost King missed the bottle and saw a bright golden light in the sky. Suddenly, it started raining. The Ghost King ordered all the other ghosts to hide. Since the rain was actually the 5-flavored tea of forgetfulness, it could make anyone forget who they were. As soon as the ghosts made contact with the tea, they forgot their own identities. The black ghost servant pointed at the Ghost King and told him that it was his turn next. He told him that the effect of the tea was temporary, but it was enough to stop him. The ghost servants decided to charge the Ghost King, while his soldiers were under the effect of the tea. However, When they were about to hit him, the Ghost Queen appeared and completely engulfed him in her tornado of blood. She absorbed all of his power and was now even stronger than before. The ghost servants couldn't believe that it was the Shura ghost born from the Styx. Away from all this chaos, Lee and the others were having a good time. After spending their day eating and sleeping, Lee told them that they were finally ready to ask someone about the situation in Jade City. Nun Nun quickly threw a female ghost on the ground for Lee to question. The ghost started begging Lee for help. Nun Nun shook her a bit and told her to quit acting. Lee felt like a king at this moment, with the kids being his guards. He quickly pulled Nun Nun away and asked the ghost if she was okay. Nun Nun told him that the ghost was bad since she pretended to be a lost child in order to draw her near and eat her. Lee finally realized what the ghost lady actually was. When he asked her about the city, she told him that it was full of ghosts, and the ghost servants were currently fighting the Ghost King. Lee asked her if the ghost servants could beat the Ghost King, and the girl told him that she didn't know. The city was about 10 miles away from them, but Lee didn't want to risk going there with the children. Also because he was crapping his pants, he suggested that they move far away from the city and visit it when the fighting was over. He called out to Nun Nun and the Dragon Girl to follow him, but he didn't mention Blackie. As the three of them walked back, Blackie stood there staring in the direction of the city. The battle inside the city was intense. The Shura girl used spears made out of blood to attack the ghost servants. They tried to dodge them, but the attack was too fast. The Shura clan was established in the past by the ancestors of Styx. They were suppressed for a while by Ct Garba Bodis Sattva. However, the underworld servants had no chance against someone from that clan. The girl announced that the ghost soldiers had lost their memories and couldn't fight, so she was going to eat them for her cultivation. She started draining blood from all the ghosts and absorbed it into her own body. The ghost servants knew that they couldn't let her continue sucking blood, since it would make her impossible to defeat. Therefore, they started saving the ghosts from being eaten. Just a moment ago, they were fighting against these ghosts, and now they were trying to save them. As the ghost servants desperately tried to prevent the Shura girl from getting more blood, they wondered if the expert was ever going to show up. Outside the city, Lee and the others were walking away. Lee told Nun Nun and the Dragon Girl to follow him and ordered Blackie to stay behind and help the city. The Shura girl was now getting serious. She saw that the ghost servants were trying to prevent her from sucking up blood, so she summoned a giant blood golem and used it to burn the ghost servants who stood in her way. She laughed as the golem continued causing destruction in the city. However, she was suddenly silenced as she noticed a dog in front of her. Blackie stood on the roof of a building and pressed his paw to her face. The girl wondered where he had come from. Meanwhile, Blackie thought to himself that he was just doing some chores for his master again. Blackie was now standing on a cloud, and the girl was still confused about the whole situation. The servants lit up as they saw this, since they thought that it was the expert's doing. The girl started laughing again and told Blackie that she was surprised to see him, since she didn't expect a living being to appear, but he was just an extra meal for her. She crossed her fingers and immediately turned into a huge demon. Blackie stood still and didn't move an inch as the demon continued advancing towards him. The demon girl thanked him for the meal, as she was about to eat him alive, but for some reason, she couldn't even close her mouth. It felt like she was trying to eat a solid rock. Blackie mocked her and asked if her teeth were not good. He offered to show his own teeth and revealed his terrifying form. The demon girl was scared for her life as she saw how powerful Blackie actually was. Blackie closed his mouth and ate her whole. However, he didn't enjoy it very much since it tasted like poop. All the ghost servants gathered in front of Blackie to thank him and the expert. Blackie asked them if they knew if he was going to come. The ghost servants told him that they had already received the message from the expert. A girl had informed them that the expert was rushing to the town with 2 small girls and a dog. She had instructed them to take care of him. The servants explained that after hearing the news of the expert's arrival, they just tried their best to hold on until he came to save them. Blackie looked down as he realized that it was all part of the expert's plan. He didn't send Nun Nun and the Dragon Girl, since the Ghost Girl was too powerful for them to handle. He had specifically chosen him for this task, and he was not just doing some chores for him. Blackie's eyes teared up as he thought that Lee believed in him. Bro was still living in delusions. He looked back at the servants and told them that the expert would arrive by dawn. He asked them if they all remembered the rules. All the servants bowed their heads and told him that they knew everything. As Blackie left the city in style, the servants couldn't help but notice how handsome he was. Blackie went back to join Lee as he got out of his tent. He noticed that the sky was clear and the strange aura from yesterday was gone. He thought to himself that the ghost servants were amazing, since they were able to protect the city. As Li entered the city, all the ghost servants were already standing in line to welcome him. Li noticed Chang standing in the line and waved at him. As he got inside, Chang asked him why he was in the Jade City. Before Li could even answer, he told him that he must be traveling and happened to pass by the city by pure coincidence. He then offered him a seat at the city's main council. Li told him that he didn't feel qualified enough to sit on that chair. Everyone looked at Chang with murderous intent as he realized that he needed to act better. He quickly started to think of an excuse and told Li that the city belonged to mortals and they couldn't sit on the chair since they were ghosts, so it was appropriate for him to sit on that chair since he was also immortal. The ghost servant took a sigh of relief as Li bought the explanation. As Li sat on the chair, the ghost servant told him that they had taken care of all the threats in the city, so he didn't need to worry about them. Li praised their efforts by saying that they were fast. The ghost servant told him that the downfall of the underworld allowed these ghosts to do such things, and they ended up killing a lot of people. He got mad and said that if it was the past, the ghosts would have entered the 18th floor of hell. Li seemed a bit surprised by this and asked him if the underworld had 18 floors of hell. The ghost servant revealed that hell did have 18 floors, but it collapsed after the catastrophe. Nothing was going well in the underworld, and they were the only ones left to support it. Li realized that everything the ghost servant was talking about was exactly the same as the fairy tales from his previous life. He stood up and wondered if the fairy tales from his last life were actually true. At the same time in the immortal world, Huo asked Princess Yang and Ling Zhu if the two of them were actually from the Heavenly Palace. Princess Yang told her that they didn't hide it on purpose, but they just thought that it was unnecessary to bring it up, since the Heavenly Palace was destroyed. They were adopted by the Queen and had 7 siblings. However, the only ones remaining were the 2 of them. Li Yuyun told them that they must know a lot of secrets about their past. Huo started asking the sisters about the underworld and the fate of dragons and phoenixes. Princess Yang told her that the expert had already explained everything she knew in Journey to the West. Moreover, she was just a junior golden immortal at the time of the catastrophe, so she couldn't get much information about the important events. Hearing this, Huo thought about Journey to the West. Back at Jade City, Li asked the ghost servant if he was familiar with Sun Wukong. The servant told him that he was familiar with the name, but he couldn't remember it. The white ghost servant walked in and asked him if he was talking about the monkey. He revealed that they knew about the monkey, but they were not at odds with him. He burned himself into a relic and died. Li panicked as he heard this, since he realized that everything in his journey to the West was actually true. Li hadn't traveled through time, he had actually traveled through books. Li thought to himself that since the ghost servant was claiming that the Monkey King turned himself into a relic, it might be an extra story of Journey to the West. When the story of Journey to the West concluded, a massive catastrophe hit all worlds. It caused the disappearance of the Heavenly Palace and the destruction of the underworld. Wu Tian led the demon clan that rose after the catastrophe. Li finally realized why people were so interested in listening to his stories, because he wasn't actually telling them a fictional story, he was actually telling them history. Chang asked Li if he was interested in hearing the story of the Monkey King. Li quickly said yes and offered them some alcohol. He tried buttering them up and revealed that he not only brewed the alcohol, but also planted the gourds to serve as a container for it. As soon as the servants tasted the alcohol, they found themselves drowning in the ocean. As they looked up, they saw a huge bottle pouring down alcohol. They were in an ocean of alcohol. The 2 of them realized that Li was trying to show off his strength by using the alcohol. They thought that they were fools to think that it was just alcohol. After drinking, they suddenly asked him what he wanted to know. Li told them that it was nothing serious, and he just wanted to know what happened. After the Monkey King turned him into a relic, the ghost servant stared at Li with his eyes wide open and started crying. He apologized and told him that he had poor memory and couldn't recall anything, since it happened a long time ago. Li got a bit weirded out and told him to calm down. The ghost servant looked at Chang and told Li that he might be able to tell him something. Chang was just as clueless as his friend, so he looked back at him in confusion. The ghost servant told Li that after the death of the Monkey King, the catastrophe occurred, the underworld was destroyed, and they couldn't really protect themselves. Li was a bit disappointed after finding out that they didn't know much. He then told them that he had an idea about the ghosts that wandered around. So he basically suggested that the underworld could establish an office in the mortal world that would manage everything outside. The people in charge of the office or temple would be mortals who were well known and competent for the job. It will help with the staff shortage in the underworld, and also increase its status in the mortal world. They could also use this temple as a stronghold to take care of emergencies in the mortal world. Both of the ghost servants were mesmerized upon hearing this suggestion. They looked at him and wondered if they were actually witnessing a saint at work. The two of them bowed down and started thanking him for his suggestion. Lee started sweating and told them that they were just exaggerating. The ghost servant wiped his tears and told himself that Lee didn't need their thanks since he was too strong. Lee immediately looked at the ghost servants and told them that he needed their help. He sat them down and asked if a mortal could still cultivate immortality if they didn't have a spiritual root. He looked directly into their eyes and mentioned the soul repairing method. Both of the ghost servants nervously looked at each other. They explained to Lee that mortals and ghosts had different methods of cultivation, since they were both different. Ghosts cultivated with the intent to be reborn into a different physical body, and mortals couldn't do that. Lee started tearing up upon hearing this. He thought to himself that if he tried to start again in a new body, it might be a bit of a risk. He hoped that they might still give him a good job at the temple, if he kept a good reputation, and he would have a chance to stay with Dai Yi forever. The ghost servants were worried as they saw him blushing out of nowhere. One of them spoke up and revealed that there was a treasured secret method of cultivation in the underworld that even mortals could practice. Lee asked him if he could somehow gain access to the method. The ghost immediately got up and assured him that they would get the method for him. As they left, Lee started shedding tears of joy as he hoped that he might finally be able to cultivate immortality. This guy literally has all the stats maxed out and still wants an upgrade. Nun and the Dragon Girl saw Lee celebrating and wondered if he had gotten sick of acting like a mortal and wanted some change. Lee noticed them pouring alcohol and immediately shouted at them to stop. Meanwhile, a huge war was about to start in the underworld. The members of the Shura clan were turning against the underworld army. Shura pointed his sword at the underworld general and told him that a new generation and the underworld were about to be rebuilt. As the two men screamed at each other at the top of their lungs, they noticed a ghost servant running between both armies. Before they could start the war, Chang stumbled on a rock and fell between them. Everyone stopped what they were doing and started staring at him. The general looked at him with his rage-filled eyes and told him that he was courting death by stepping in between two armies. Shura also sat down and asked him what he was doing here. The ghost servant frantically told them that he was on a mission related to Master Lee. As soon as the general heard Lee's name, he called out to Shura and told him that they needed to postpone the war. The ghost servant finishing his job was much more important than their war. Everyone stopped fighting and gave way to the servant. The ghost servant apologized for interfering and quickly made his way to the queen. At that time, the queen was preparing soup in a huge pot. Why does she keep aging back and forth? The queen asked him why he was in such a hurry to meet her. Chang reported that they had saved Jade City from the Ghost King with the expert's help. However, the expert had wished to practice the law of the flesh body. The queen was shocked upon hearing this, but her expressions suddenly changed as she realized that it was part of the expert's plan. The ghost servant told her that the technique was a treasure of the underworld, but before he could even finish, the queen threw the book at him and ordered him to hand it over to the expert. She told him that handing over such a precious book showed their sincerity towards the expert. The ghost servant was left speechless, so he simply bowed down and left. Lee held the book with a silly expression on his face. He thanked the ghost servants for the book and told them that he would look at the book. The queen kept thinking of the secret technique as she was resting in her chair. It was a brilliant technique, and the only downside was that it was too hard to practice. Many shaman ancestors had spent their entire lives trying to cultivate it, but they all failed. Even if one could comprehend 10% of the book, they would gain immeasurable rewards. As soon as Lee opened the book, a powerful beam of light shot up at the sky. The light was so intense that it was difficult to look directly at it. The queen also saw the light from her window while she was in her room. She started spitting blood, and he wondered how the expert was able to finish the technique in just half an hour. The light could even be seen in the immortal world. Princess Yang looked at it and told the others that something big was about to happen between heaven and earth. Dai Yi looked back at the finished heavenly palace in front of them and suggested that they break the seal of the palace first, before focusing on other things. She didn't care about what was going to happen to the world. The only thing she cared about was Lee's plan to revive the heavenly palace in the ancient times. She truly wanted to be useful in the eyes of the expert. Back in Jade City, the ghost servants noticed that Lee had attracted all the merits in the world, and they were entering his body. Even the sage would call him master if he saw him right now. Lee could feel the power entering his body. He lifted his hand, and a glowing orb appeared around it. he had successfully cultivated using the technique. Li told Chang that he had successfully mastered the technique. Chang replied enthusiastically, praising him for his achievement. However, Li still didn't know how the technique worked. He stared at a wall in front of him and tried to punch it from a distance. The power in his punch was so great that even the wall was scared of being hit. However, as the smoke from the blast cleared off, it was revealed that the attack hadn't damaged the wall at all. Chang was completely shocked by this incident, while Li looked a bit disappointed, so he asked Chang about what was going on. Chang told him that he had mastered the meritorious flesh body in just a single attempt. Li asked him why he couldn't damage the wall if he was so strong. Chang told him to look closer, since the wall appeared brighter. He then started telling him how great the technique was, but it had no lethality. Li got disappointed upon hearing this, since the technique sounded useless. However, Chang told him that the technique had a practical use. He demonstrated this by touching his arm with his finger. The technique was immediately triggered, and Chang was blasted to the wall with a powerful counterattack. Chang got up with most of his teeth missing, and explained that the technique was extremely useful, since it protected the body from all attacks. In other words, he had 0 attack, but 100 defense. As Li attended to Chang's wounds, he revealed that he was the first one to master the meritorious flesh body, so he would have to figure out the rest of its functionalities by himself. Li looked down and told him that it must be a great technique since it was a secret treasure of the underworld. He thought to himself that his technique made him invincible, so it wasn't bad at all. Li looked up and jokingly told the ghost servants that he was wishing for a technique that could make him fly. Suddenly, a golden Lamborghini appeared in front of them all. All he needs is a private jet now, and he can start selling online courses. Li wondered if the Lamborghini was actually a mount. However, he wanted to fly, so he didn't know why a Lamborghini appeared instead of a mount that could fly. He suddenly realized something and hopped into the car. He called Nun Nun and the Dragon Girl to get inside. After making sure that the two of them had their seatbelts on, he put on his sunglasses and pressed on the accelerator. Instead of driving forward, the car flew into the sky. Blackie stood there wondering if Li had forgotten about him. Li flew over the city in his golden Lambo, while his amazing car impressed everyone. With his hair flying back, he thought to himself that he was probably the only person who was capable of flying a sports car in the sky. After flying for a bit, the three of them landed back in Jade City. Li handed over a box to Chang and told him that they had brought back a local product for them. There was actually a pizza in the box with the words authentic written on it. This is more surprising than the golden Lambo. The ghost servants told Li that they needed to leave now, since the underworld was in trouble. Li tried to be courteous and asked them what was going on. Chang explained that when he went back to fetch the secret technique, he saw the Shura general rebelling against the underworld in order to steal the Book of Life and Death. Li was shocked upon hearing this and asked him if he was talking about the book that could determine the life and death of people. Chang told him that he was right, but they couldn't let anyone else steal the book, so he needed to go back quickly. After standing there for a few more seconds, he quickly turned towards Li and asked him if he wanted to come with him. Li told him that he didn't want to go, and Chang started looking at him with an innocent expression. Li thought about it for a while and realized that he could probably change his lifespan if he got a hold of that book. He agreed to go with them in the hopes that the book could help him too. The two ghost servants looked at each other, thinking that the underworld was saved. Li stopped for a moment and told Blackie that he couldn't come with him, since he was just a mortal dog. He also didn't want to take Nun Nun and the Dragon Girl with him, since both of them were young and couldn't see the scenery of war. He then summoned the car and invited the ghost servants to hop inside. The two of them were excited to be able to ride on such a treasure. As soon as they sat down, Li accelerated and they took off into the sky. Blackie and the other two were left dejected, as they felt like the expert had abandoned them. Meanwhile, a lion-looking creature sat on a cloud above them. His master had instructed him to give some precious alcohol to a person who was visiting that place. The lion wondered who the person could be and why they needed to give him that alcohol. He thought to himself that he would eat the person if they were not powerful. Just then, he noticed Nun Nun and the others on the ground. They were eating some fruits given to them by Li. The lion wondered how they got their hands on the divine fruit. He didn't think that they deserved to eat this rare fruit, so he went down and threatened to kill them unless they handed over the apple to him. The three of them looked at him with an annoyed expression and continued eating their apple. The lion screamed at them and asked them why they were ignoring him. He asked them if they were scared of him, since he was a divine beast. When he got no answer, he tried attacking them to steal the fruit. However, He was blasted in an instant and vanished into nothingness. I wouldn't want to be a side character in this story. In the underworld, the war was at full pace between the underworld general and Shura. The general told him that they were like brothers who had fought countless wars in order to protect the underworld. He never wanted to fight against him after all these years. Shura told him that the underworld they knew was gone, and things were changing. It was time to build a new underworld, and only the strongest were going to rule. The Book of Life and Death was about to appear, and whoever acquired it gained control over the mortal and the ghost world. The general and Shura were the two strongest people in the underworld, so it had to be one of them who controlled the Book of Life and Death. When Shura saw that the general wasn't going to give up on the book, he knew he had to use all of his power. He unleashed his anger on Aksharan. It was his most powerful technique that could devour everything in its path. The general had already used most of his power, trying to suppress the ghosts in the Sea of Blood and in the mortal world. With his current state, he knew that he could defeat Shura. He accepted his fate and stood firmly in front of his powerful attack. Shura launched himself at the general, with his sword drawn out, and went for the finishing blow. Just as he was about to hit him, one of the ghost soldiers stepped in front of the general in order to protect him. However, before Shura could hit either of them, he heard someone laughing close by. He screamed as he saw a car casually flying through his technique. Lee was fully enjoying his ride, while everyone else was just confused. As he landed between the two armies, he got out and asked Chang if he really was at the right place. The general grabbed Lee by his arm and told Shura that they should give the book to him and stop fighting. Lee couldn't believe what he was hearing. Shura told him that he had no desire to obtain the Book of Life and Death in order to rule the underworld. What he wanted was a strong leader for the underworld who could rebuild it. He thought that he was the strongest person in the underworld, but when his technique was stopped by Lee, he knew that he was the strongest. Therefore, Shura also decided to give the book to Lee. Lee wondered if he had unintentionally blocked his attack using his passive ability. He had started to realize that his ability was actually good. He also thought that it was all a plot for time travel, so he went along with their decision. However, before he could accept the book, Chang jumped in and told Shura that he was spitting nonsense. He told him that he had aimed his technique wrong and asked him why he was suggesting the expert to rule the underworld when he was just immortal. He didn't even know anything about how the underworld worked. Lee almost lost his mind with all the insults and realized that he had been thinking too much. Shura wondered if Chang was trying to tell him about the master who had given them the rebirth in Pure Land mantra. He knew that the expert enjoyed acting as immortal, so he feared that he must have made him upset with his offer. He quickly pushed Chang away and told Lee that he was being rude. He said that it was his own fault that his ultimate move was blocked and promised to reflect on his shortcomings. Hearing this, Lee asked him if he was going to continue fighting. Everyone looked at Lee in confusion. They thought that it was better to let the expert decide if they were going to fight or not, so they stared at him. Lee told them that they had to fight in order to figure out who got the Book of Life and Death. The general realized that the expert wanted to watch them fight, so he asked Shura if he was ready. Shura told Lee to move to a safer distance, since he was going to use his ultimate move again. As Shura began channeling his technique, Lee stopped him. He looked at Chang and told him to join the battle, since he came to the underworld to assist. Lee watched as Shura unleashed his wrath on the general and Chang. The general army lost the war, and Shura was declared the winner. He asked Lee what he thought about the battle. Lee told him that he initially thought that there was going to be a tragic battle. However, it was just like a middle school student's fight, and they were all acting. Shura smiled and told Lee that he was correct, even though the whole underworld almost got destroyed due to this war. As they walked, Lee asked him if they were waiting for the Book of Life and Death. Suddenly, a bright yellow light appeared on the top of the mountain. It was a sign of the appearance of the Book of Life and Death. Shura couldn't believe that the book simply appeared when Lee mentioned it. The book was covered in a golden light with writings scattered around it. Lee asked them what it was. Chang explained that the book was not yet complete and could only begin its function after it had finished recording the information of all the people in the world. Lee thought to himself that the book must also contain information about him and Da Yi. He was mesmerized by the display and told them that it looked like a computer, loading all the information. Shura asked him what a computer was, but the ghost servant told him to keep quiet. They all had alcohol and a nice dinner as they waited for the book to finish loading. Lee got tired and asked them how much longer it was going to take. Chang explained that there were a lot of living beings in the world, so it was going to take some time. Suddenly, the book finished loading the information. The general ordered Chang to go up the mountain and fetch the book. As Chang went and grabbed the book, he couldn't help but appreciate how important it was, since it could manipulate the situation of heaven and earth. The next second, he got kicked to the ground, and the book was stolen by a demon girl. The demon girl turned out to be the powerful Lord Moshe. Both the generals screamed at Moshe as she held the book and told her that she couldn't just read it as she pleased. Moshe complained that the connection between heaven and earth and the ending age of Dharma was a good point for the demons to rule. However, the big shots had other ideas, and they didn't want the mortals to get the luck. Thanks to them, all of their advantages were gone now. She asked them if they really thought that she would read the book if she had another option. It seemed like the generals didn't care what she had to say, so Moshe got mad. She told them that it didn't matter. Since she had the book in her hands, she could finally see what the path of the demons and mortals was. The general and Shura tried to stop her, but before the three of them could fight, Li asked them if they could just show the book to her. This surprised everyone as they blankly stared at Li. After a bit of silence, the generals immediately agreed. Li only said it because he also wanted to read the book. The generals couldn't disobey his order, so they stood back and waited for Moshe to start reading. Moshe didn't notice Li at first, but now that she looked at him, she realized that he had a meritorious flesh body. She didn't expect such a big shot to be present in the underworld. She wondered if they were setting a trap for her and pictured them all grinning as they told her to read the book. She thought that it was better for her not to read the book. However, since it had been decided by Li, both the generals forced her to read the book. As Moshe opened the book, a bright light hit her. She quickly turned the pages and searched for her own name. It turned out that her lifespan was boundless. This made her happy, as she thought that the demon clan was going to rule. With this news, she took off with the book before Li even had the chance to read it. The generals wondered if Li was trying to tell them that demons would rule the world. Meanwhile, Li was almost losing his mind, since Moshe had stolen the book. As Moshe flew away with the book, she wondered who the mysterious person was. She thought to herself that the person was trying to tell her something, and you may even be someone who was working for the demon clan from the shadows. She stood at the edge of the cliff as she realized that all the hardships and betrayals she faced were short-term exercises and a learning process for her. Moshe even decided to pay the expert for his kindness once her clan rose to power. As she was busy announcing her demonic plans, a huge water bottle flew towards her and asked if the expert had allowed her to take the book away. Moshe looked at the bottle in confusion, so the bottle got mad and asked her again if the expert had allowed her to take the book away.